Hello, everybody. This is Stephen Whitfield with Drilling Contractor. We're here on the stage at the 2024 IADC HSC&T conference in Houston, Texas. And I'm joined now by two guys who are sitting on this stage here at this conference, Neil Forrest of Seadrill, Ralph Shreeve of E7, and we're going to be talking about a collaboration between the two companies on the shared supervision development program, and we'll talk a little bit about safety and all kinds of things going on here. So I'm going to thank both gentlemen for joining me here today, and we're just going to get right to it. So Neil, let's talk a little bit about shared supervision. You know, went over a lot of it here on this stage, but for the folks at home who are watching this, can you tell us a little bit about what it is and why was it interesting for Seadrill to sort of participate in this?
Yeah, thanks. Well, shared supervision is our formal supervisor development program, and the reason it came about was we'd been looking at investigations over the years and starting to look at this kind of root cause bucket that we were putting some of the findings in, and it was saying stuff around, you know, lack of supervision or poor supervision, and we started to get into a discussion around what does that really mean? Is it what was meant by that, and is the supervisors not doing what they're supposed to be doing? Do they need to be at site more? We're trying to understand what the real issue was when we were looking at these investigations, and that led us to find out that you know, very few of our supervisors, particularly in the drilling and deck side of the operation, hadn't had any formal training. You know, and so it was an attempt to put something into place that could fill that gap.
So Ralph, I'm going to come to you here. One of the key things with this collaboration, and forgive me if I did not pronounce this correctly, but SMEAX. It's sort of dealing with a little bit of sort of military style leadership, and you know, I'm probably not going to be the first person to explain this. Why don't you explain sort of what this is, how this sort of fits with the collaboration, and sort of why a sort of the military instruction can sort of fit within a rig situation.
Yeah, cool. So in the military, you've got routine work. You've got stuff that people know really, really well. They've drilled on it. They know how to do it. And if the work's predictable, then start with a plan, execute it, make sure that people don't drift off plan, only make those adjustments that are strictly necessary. Drilling and the military are very similar, though, because not all work is normal. We've actually also got uncertainty. And when the work is uncertain, when it's a bit unpredictable, then the starting point is actually a proper appraisal of the situation. And that's really what the SMEAX process is built around. The first thing you have to do is understand your situation. You've got to form a view whether the mission can actually be safely, efficiently, and reliably executed. So the beginning point, S, is about understanding your situation. Then it's about seeing whether the mission's achievable or whether any of the parameters have to change. Then we go into planning the execution. And while we're planning that, we need to start to think about the fact that because it's uncertain, at what point, how early are we going to stop to do a review? You know, let's debrief on these things. And these are all things that apply very, very well in the drilling world. There's admin considerations, that's the A of SMEAX. There's a big focus on command and communication. Who's accountable for what? How are we communicating? The S actually came as SMEAX migrated out of the military in Australia to become the Australian Inter-Service Incident Management System. Australia is cursed with floods and fires, and police and ambulance and other services have to coordinate. And the S is a safety check. So it's an end-to-end process that really supports what Seadrill were already doing in always ensuring there was a safe system of work in place. And it just became an enhancement to say, what if the gap between the plan and how we need to perform is too big? And how do we then replan it? And it's the idea that we'll start by really getting a proper perspective on what the situation is.
So Neil, you guys ran a pilot on this. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the work that you guys have been doing with this program, and what's some of the feedback you've heard?
Yeah, so as Ralph had mentioned, we were wanting to develop that program and see how it would apply to us. So the first step was to take that to a pilot. We chose two areas, one in the Gulf of Mexico here in the US and one in Mexico, two different rig types, two different cultures, and it was to see how the crews responded to that. We kind of took the program straight out generic and to see how they responded. We applied it and ran it for about 12 weeks, did their back-to-backs, and came back looking for some feedback. Bottom line was the guys saw there was value in it, but there was some improvements they felt that we could take on board to make it better for a fleet-wide rollout. So we completed the pilot probably around 2 years ago, 18 months ago, take the feedback, redesigned some of the bits they gave reference to, and we've just completed the rollout in Brazil, and we're heading off to Angola, and then we'll be off back to the US late this year, early next, and then we'll be in Europe as well. So the pilot gave us some real interesting feedback. One was they would have liked to see Ralph at site, actually meet him before it kicks off, and it's an opportunity to explain the programme to the management team on shore before he goes out to the rig. Secondly, there was use the Seadrill language, not generic terms, and they felt they could connect quicker to things. That was in the missions. And lastly, which was interesting, there was a split on whether they liked doing it at site on their time on, which we designed the program around, or if they could do it in a typical classroom. We stuck with the at-site method, but really interesting to see that original pilot, the crews were split on what mode or medium how it should be delivered. So I'd say we rolled all that up, took the learnings, and we're well through the program and look to make it a sustainable way of how we do things moving forward.
So Ralph, Neil mentioned a few things about sort of the feedback that Seadrill's been getting. So from your perspective, what were you hearing with the work that you guys were doing?
Yeah, so once we'd actually acted on the feedback and started to use Seadrill's language, that was actually much easier for people to connect quickly. The other thing that we'd got the feedback on, as Neil had said, was that, where's your connection with these people? Get out there and meet them. Make sure that the leaders and the senior leaders are supportive of this program, and that you've got a relationship, because the learning that we're doing is very collaborative. And so you've got to build on this idea that if learning is a social process, have you actually invested any time in building the relationship that you need to be able to facilitate those learning sessions? So the feedback on the operational phase, where we went to Brazil and delivered the amended program, was very high. About 90% of people said that the program was either very good, the highest category, or at least good. Now, you've got to be realistic. 10% didn't like it. You can't please everybody all of the time. But I think we're very pleased with the level of feedback and the content that we're getting. And the other thing that we're doing is we're continuing to respond to that feedback and adapting the program wherever we see there's an opportunity to improve it.
So some fascinating insight from Neil and Ralph here on this collaboration between Seadrill and E7. I'd like to thank both of them for taking the time to speak with us today, and thank you for watching Drilling Contractor.